Good evening, everyone. We are very happy that you're here and joined us here at this important program organized by Chennai International Center. Let me invite Mr. Gopal Srinivasan, Chairman of Chennai International Center, to start the program.
Welcome to the Chennai International Center's discussion on the budget in Tamil Nadu. Normally, when we have a discussion on the budget, it's on the national budget. I think it's a sign of great progress that the budget of the state of Tamil Nadu, starting with an outstanding white paper that was published by the government, has actually become the talk of the town, the talk of the state, and I would say a talk of many other states. It is with these remarks and the statement made by the Honorable Chief Minister in his introductory comments when he started the Economic Advisory Council, whose members are also here today, when the Chief Minister said, "I am speaking of transformation, not reforms," he said. He basically said that do whatever it takes to make the transformation happen. These are words you hear from Jeff Bezos and Amazon. These are words you hear in startups. But it's just outstanding that with those curtain-raising remarks, the Economic Advisory Council, consisting of Nobel Prize laureates and stalwarts from Tamil Nadu, has been formed, and Dr. Narayan, who is a member, a former finance secretary, a close friend, an associate of CIC. We launched his book here at CIC, is here with us today. With this, I am so delighted to invite Dr. Palanivel, the Honorable Finance Minister of the state of Tamil Nadu, a dear friend of CIC. Both Dr. Narayan and Dr. P.T. Rajan are members, fellows of CIC, and so we take great pride in that, to talk about the budget. Many years ago, it was said that when will the day come when we'll have erudite, qualified professionals from the best institutions in the world acting as our finance minister? Ladies and gentlemen, that day is now. To have somebody who is not only an eminent third-generation family member of one of the outstanding political families in the state. I mean, not many people may remember that his grandfather was actually the chief minister of the Madras presidency, and his father was a noted politician. A third-generation member who brings that tradition along with modern thinking, an MIT degree, a fund manager, a professional banker, and with a passion for developing the state of Tamil Nadu and its people as its finance minister. So welcome, PTR. Welcome, Dr. Narayan. We're so delighted you could join us, and we look forward to this function. Vanita, over to you.
Thank you, Gopal. Welcome, Dr. Narayan.
To the Finance Minister, good evening, sir. It's a pleasure and honor to be with you for this interaction today. In the last couple of weeks, you had over 50 media interactions, patiently explaining and answering queries. And this is to really felicitate you on your clarity and patience all these days. I think what the way we would probably go forward is that maybe you'd like to make some opening remarks, some remarks for about 20, 25 minutes, 30 minutes or so. And then we could get into some discussions. But there are just a couple of things that I want to tell the audience here. There are a lot of significant announcements in this budget, which are very different. And I just want to highlight a few. These are not all. You see, one announcement which was reiterated again yesterday is a gap filling for children who have dropped out, who have had a very tough situation in this COVID. And an announcement, there is an Ennam Ezhuthum program, there's a program for teaching them. That's a significant announcement. There's an announcement for setting this MSME committee to look at the productivity, performance, as well as the financial strain of the committee. There's an announcement that OAP will be given to all those people who deserve it. There's an announcement that GST would be going a data-based analytical way to find out why is it that GST revenues are dropping. There's also an announcement to strengthen cooperative banks. I think this is a very, very significant announcement. And that this can become a financing source for the state. Then there's an announcement for more desalination plants along the border, with one at Tuticorin. And there's an announcement for dispersal of industry and more number of Sipcot parks. I don't know whether you noticed all that. These are all, all very great announcements. But I now request the minister to have his say on what all went behind, what he's planning, what he's going forward to. Minister.
Thank you. First of all, Dr. Narayan, I must say at the outset that one of the great professional privileges of my life is to work with this outstanding advisory council that we have. People who have such a diversity of experience, all eminent in their own way, but from such different perspectives. And what has been remarkable to me, and I think I mentioned in the early stages that when we approached the individuals, we didn't actually tell them who else was going to be on the team. So we actually approached them one at a time. And it's out of their public-spirited nature that they agreed without asking who else is going to be on. And what is remarkable to me is that though there are different perspectives, as you would expect, and that's what we don't want groupthink. But some things come very, very clearly across all of them. Things like protecting the bottom of the pyramid, things like focusing on the MSME sector. That is universal, from Jean Drèze, who I would say maybe within the people that we have, maybe at one end of the spectrum of maybe Esther and John are not that far apart. And then from somebody like Raghu, who spent a lot of his life looking at markets and banking regulations. He still focuses a lot on things like how children get back to school. So, let me start maybe by pointing out that the biggest difference between government and private enterprise, in my opinion, is not the philosophy, it's not the motive, it is the efficiency or the design of the organization. So the greatest difficulty I have is in organizations, in commercial organizations. Once everybody agrees that something is the right thing to do, it may not be easy to get there, but once you get there, then it's not that hard to go ahead and execute what you need to get done. In government, not only is it much, much harder to get everybody to agree that something is the right thing to do, but after it's agreed that it's the right thing to do, then there are so many barriers to execution. So I start with the basic philosophy of 2 or 3 things. All over the world, we can learn lessons. We are not that unique. The human condition is quite common across many cultures. And I've commented elsewhere that, in my travels around the world, I find that though customs vary a lot, values are almost all the same across so many cultures. And in that sense, it is now, I think, beyond doubt that strong, independent institutions not only protect and support good democracies, but also provide the platform for economic progress and growth and jobs. And there was this debate for a while, which comes first? Does prosperity drive people to demand better institutions and cleaner processes? Or do cleaner processes and better institutions drive economic growth? And I think by now it's very clear, because we've seen some reversal. We have seen countries like the US, we have seen some parts of Europe, where once they were in a much better place, and as institutions are frayed, their economic circumstances are frayed. So I think the cause-effect relationship is a little bit clearer now, and it is towards the side of strong institutions and good processes and good administration leads to good prosperous outcomes. The second thing which I learned, at least during my time in Singapore firsthand, is that if society is structured properly, if harmonious relations exist, if people get along, then of course that helps a lot in economic activity. And, as a former consultant before I was in the banking business, though I realized that change is hard culturally, psychologically, and though, systems are broken for a reason, they're not broken randomly, they're broken because somebody benefits from them being broken in that specific way. But still, if the system is fixed, then the outcomes come at a more micro level than the country. And if the system is not fixed, how many ever band-aids and temporary solutions and kind of, short-term what can I say, innovations you bring about, you still are going to end up with the structural problems rearing their head. So the more we spent time in government, the more some things became very clear to me. And the number one is that the last 7 years, and I say this apart from politics, I'm not talking about politics now, the lack of leadership. It is the lack, we may have had our differences with Ms. Jayalalitha. It is what it is politically. But nobody could deny that she was talented and that she had at least some measure of control over the entire administration. And the void that was created by her absence really, really, really hurt the state, our people, and our futures. Because it allowed for this kind of, amorphous aggregation of people who had very little, public interest beyond self-interest. I'm not saying they're particularly bad or evil persons. I'm saying that may happen in any party. It just so happened that party was in power when that happened. So the consequence of that is that the system is profoundly broken. It is profoundly broken in the sense that there is no accountability, there's no measurability. It would be, shocking in any private enterprise to have this kind of a system where audit reports get filed. And I think I said in the budget, there are something like 2,000 something audit paras in the, open out of the CAG reports alone. And I imagine that the CAG only samples. And so it was very clear to me that unless we attempt to fix the system to some extent, there's no such thing as 100% fix. And what the long term, hopefully we fix step by step. But unless we change direction, unless we change from no accountability, no consequence, no measurement, no data, to something that resembles more like a normal functional working enterprise, then everything else was not fruitful. So the bad news is that, in my opinion, as I said to the MLA's meeting in my party, I said it's almost like, the people leaving have poisoned the well and gone. We are facing a kind of rotten system. The good news is that Tamil Nadu is such a wealthy state, and we have so many resources in so many places, and the goodwill of our people, the average education is so high, the diaspora is so well connected, the talent that we were able to get together in the Economic Advisory Council as an example, that we are not profoundly limited. We are profoundly in a good place, but the system needs to get fixed. And so I think there's a natural progression of what should happen. And though it was not quite obvious in the budget presentation, the priority that I made to the Chief Minister was, let us fix ourselves first. Before we start talking about huge outside investment and job creation and changing the world and changing society and all that, why don't we start fixing ourselves first? Ourselves meaning the government. So I see this as kind of a three-phase operation. The first being, we fix ourselves to some extent, or at least show enough progress that we have something to talk about and something to prove that we are not the last bunch of guys. The second phase is where we now use that to go and attract investment, partnerships, expertise, and start focusing on progressive measures. And the third phase is, if we get that far and if we're actually able to provide opportunities and jobs and growth, then we need to start thinking about some fundamental reforms in society as well, right? Because the political system reflects society. Again, you can say chicken or egg, but my understanding from my 20, 30-year professional career is that the culture always gets set at the top. The rot always starts at the top. It's very rare that the system starts decaying from the feet up, as they say, a fish rots from the head down. So if that is the case, once you start fixing the head, then maybe you start trying to look at fixing the body. At some level, as all of you know, in every one of your industries, in every one of your professions, the system is far from optimal on a day-to-day basis, leave alone the role of the government. I'm just talking the government. And those are things that we'll have to think seriously about, as my friend Tharman Shanmugaratnam, the Honorable Senior Minister of Singapore, said once at a Stanchart event that we had him. Said, what we have learned is if we fix society, if we engineer society well, then the prosperity comes automatically. And if we don't do that, then no matter what we do, it doesn't work. And he went down to the detail of how they set up the HDB flats and how they make sure that there's cultural integration in the HDB flats, in the primary schools, based on the HDB flat catchment area, from there on upwards. And I think, there are some profound things we have to say. And of course, some of this, it also is a question of style. How do you want to do this? Do you believe that you are such a wise man, or, the Chief Minister, I mean, or such, self-contained, brilliant people that you can actually do this in your head and then roll it out at 8 p.m. or midnight? And we're not. We simply are not. So then the question is, how do you engage the public? And I was of the view, and I think the Chief Minister was clearly happy with that, because he said it himself, and it wasn't that far from his original view, which is that the more we get people engaged in the process, the more of the truth we put out there, the more of the situation they realize. Because we are not asking to do radical things. We are politicians. We want to be liked. We want people to vote for us. We are not going to do things that are so, unsavory that we worry about whether we'll get re-elected. That's the natural tendency of politicians, is to do crowd-pleasing things. Now, only when there's such great difficulty do you do things that you worry may have, adverse consequences in the short term, which will lead to good outcomes in the long term. And so inherently, there's nothing we should be doing that is going to be so painful, such bitter medicine, that we should keep it secret and then release it in a second. So from that perspective, we decided that starting with COVID data, real test data, we better take, we're happier to take a more transparent, more inclusive approach. And the timing of the white paper is indicative of that. We released the white paper 5 days or 6 days before the budget, because we wanted the public discourse to already have digested it, and that content to be reflected in the budget debate that started 5 or 6 days later. And I think it has given us good outcomes, from what we expected. That there is a lot of talk. And by talk, I don't mean at Chennai International Center or, big industrialists and professionals like you. My definition of success is that this talk happens in the villages, in between the auto drivers, at the vegetable markets, in the farms. So that is our goal. And we need to do a few more things to make that happen, but we're politicians. We know how to do that. So we're on our way to get there. But I will just end by saying that, as many positives as there are, and there are many. I mean, Tamil Nadu, again, I say, is a rich state. We have enormous assets. In fact, it's a bit, what can I say, unconscionable that we should be such a rich state and still have people who are having such difficult lives. But the problem we have now is, were we to generate a lot of money, which we can, very short order, very quickly, and we try to spend it, my own perspective is that were I to try and get 1 rupee into some end result, I'd be lucky if I got 50 paisa there. And so that is the limiting factor now. So it's in our own interest that we do the structural reforms. And I would also say that the probably single most frustrating thing I've seen after coming to government is that, as our other advisor, Raghuram Rajan, wrote in his book, Saving Capitalism from the Capitalists, the system is so broken that those who profit or prosper unfairly, democratically speaking, unfairly from the system, the capitalists who have won, then build the moats around themselves and prevent true free markets from happening. That was the premise of Raghu's book. That happens in government also. The few that have arrived at the right place find a way to make so much noise and have so much access into the decision making. What officially in places like the UK and US are called lobbyists. There's some equivalent of that happens here. That is very hard to really either get our intent and our communication to the people, or their feedback to us, and the noise kind of overwhelms anybody's willingness to take action. And so one of the things that I'm going to be focusing on a lot personally as a politician, as an elected official, as somebody who's connected to the people, who's run a couple of big election campaigns for the DMK, is to greatly improve the communication to the last mile, to the common man. So you're going to see that the government of Tamil Nadu's communication methods to the voters is not going to be the traditional newspaper ads alone, once in a few days, a front page ad. We are going to leverage digital media, and we're going to get the government's messages and the government's data and the government's quandaries to the people as, with as great penetration as possible, and take feedback as aggressively as possible and tailor our actions based on what we hear from the many. We always hear from the few. The few have access to us, but we want to hear from the many. And I think we are very lucky to be at a time where the many, we have now tools that can let us get to the many, if need be, bypassing the few. And, that I think is one of the great advantages we have as a function of time. Or let me conclude by saying what I said to my chief minister. I said, Anna, I'm not half the man my father was. I never will be. But what gives me confidence is that we have such an infinitely, more powerful tool set, communications, data, analytics, systems, that we are possibly, able to do things that better men than us could not, because they didn't have all these tools with them. So hopefully, that's the kind of general direction we're going. In my mind, a budget is a statement of intent, of philosophy, of priority. Where do I want to raise the money from? How do I want to spend it? What am I going to prioritize? It is not really the place to worry about this 100 scheme, that 200 scheme. There are ministers for that. But, it is what it is. The system doesn't change overnight. We're evolving. But I hope and I would like to see that the content of the budget and the nature of demands for grants changes a bit over time. And that ministers actually stand up and go through their demands and then have a fruitful discussion, rather than trying to jam all of this into a budget. And then I read for 40 departments or 50 departments, things that I'm not in control of implementing or executing or bringing to fruition. So I think these are maybe just a few random thoughts. I'm not sure they were that coherent, but I didn't actually prepare any specific remarks. So I'll just stop there, and better that we take questions.
Thank you very much, Minister. Actually, that was amazingly perceptive and incisive, a different thinking. So I said that was amazingly incisive and perceptive, and a different track altogether.